12 winters after she vanished, she came back to his ranch with a daughter who looked like him. The girl standing at the edge of the corral had Noah Mercer's eyes. That was the first truth he understood. The second was that the woman beside her was the only person he had ever loved. For 12 years, Noah had imagined 100 ways he might see Rebecca Hale again. In some of those thoughts, she was happy. In others, she regretted leaving him. On the loneliest nights, when the Wyoming wind pressed against the ranch house like a living thing, he imagined her walking through his door and finally explaining why she had disappeared 3 weeks before their wedding. He had never imagined her arriving in a hired wagon at dawn, pale from exhaustion, with an 11-year-old girl holding tightly to her hand. The wagon stood crooked near the front gate of Blackstone Ranch. Mud covered its wheels, and one of the horses hung its head as though it had been driven through the night. A thin layer of frost silvered the grass. Beyond the barn, the mountains rose beneath a cold blue sky. Noah had been carrying a sack of grain toward the stable when he saw them. The sack slipped from his shoulder and struck the ground. Rebecca looked older, though not in a way that made her less beautiful. Her chestnut hair was pinned beneath a plain traveling bonnet, and faint lines rested beside her mouth. She wore a dark green dress with dust along the hem. One glove was torn at the thumb. But the small habit of lifting her chin when frightened had not changed. Neither had the way her eyes found his. "Noah," she said. His name sounded strange in her voice after so many silent years. He stared at her, then at the child. The girl stood very still. A leather satchel hung across her narrow shoulder. She had Rebecca's brown hair, but her eyes were gray-green, the exact color Noah saw each morning in the shaving mirror. Even the slight crease above her left eyebrow matched his own. A coldness moved through him that had nothing to do with the frost. "Who is she?" Rebecca's fingers tightened around the girl's hand. The child looked up at her mother, waiting. Rebecca drew a slow breath. "Her name is Emma." "That is not what I asked." Pain crossed Rebecca's face, but she did not turn away. "No," she said quietly, "it is." Noah's ranch hands had begun appearing near the barn. They tried to look busy, but every man within hearing distance had gone silent. Noah glanced toward them. "Get back to work." Boots moved quickly, a gate creaked, someone led a horse into the stable. Noah stepped closer to Rebecca. 12 years of anger rose inside him, hot and bitter. He remembered the unfinished house he had built for her near the cottonwoods. He remembered the wedding table his mother had covered with white cloth before Rebecca vanished. He remembered riding to 3 towns, asking at every depot, hotel, and church whether anyone had seen her. He had found nothing except a letter written in her hand. A letter saying she had changed her mind. A letter saying she wanted a better life than a struggling rancher could give her. He had carried that paper until the folds nearly broke apart. Now she stood on his land with a child who had his eyes. "How old is she?" he asked. Rebecca swallowed. 11. "When does she turn 12? "January." The answer struck harder than any fist. Noah looked at Emma again. She was studying him with nervous curiosity, trying to understand why her mother's hand had begun trembling. Rebecca lowered her voice. "She is your daughter." The ranch seemed to fall silent around him. No wind. No cattle calling from the lower pasture. No sound except the soft shifting of the tired wagon horse. Noah's hand closed into a fist at his side. "You kept my child from me for 12 years. Emma flinched. Rebecca immediately drew the girl closer. "Not here. You came to my ranch. I know. You placed her in front of me and expected what? That I would invite you inside and calmly listen. I expected you to be angry. You expected correctly." Rebecca's eyes shone, but she held her tears back. "I also expected you to protect her once you knew the truth." That stopped him. Noah looked past Rebecca toward the road. Deep wheel tracks cut through the mud, but another set of marks followed beside them. Hoofprints. 2 riders, perhaps 3. His anger sharpened into something colder. "Who followed you?" Rebecca glanced toward Emma before answering. "A man who believes she belongs to him." Noah's gaze returned to her face. "Her father is standing in front of you." "I know that now." The words opened an old wound between them. Noah stepped nearer. "What does that mean?" Rebecca reached beneath her cloak and removed a folded piece of paper tied with faded blue thread. The page was stained at one corner, as if it had once been held by a wet or trembling hand. "This is the letter I received the morning I left Ash Creek," she said. "It carries your name. I wrote you no letter telling you to leave." "I believe you." "You did not believe me 12 years ago." "I did not know what I know now." Emma stood between them, watching each face in turn. Noah took the letter but did not open it. Rebecca looked toward the distant road again. Fear had settled plainly in her expression. "There is another reason I came," she said. "The man who separated us has spent 12 years making certain I never returned. 3 nights ago he found us." Noah felt every muscle in his body tighten. "What does he want?" Rebecca's voice dropped to a whisper. "Emma." A dark rider appeared on the ridge beyond the eastern pasture. Then a second horse came into view beside him. Rebecca's face lost all color. "They are already here," she said. Noah moved before Rebecca could speak again. He caught Emma gently by the shoulders and guided her toward the ranch house. The girl looked up at him in surprise, but she did not resist. "Inside," he said, "both of you." Rebecca stared toward the riders on the ridge. "They will not stop because of a locked door." "No," Noah replied, "but they will have to cross my yard before they reach it." He turned toward the barn and gave a sharp whistle. His foreman, Luke Barrett, appeared almost at once. Luke was broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, and loyal enough to have slept beside sick cattle through the worst winter in memory. He took one look at Noah's face and stopped asking questions before he began. "Bring the men clothes," Noah said. "No weapons in sight unless those riders give us a reason. Send Ben around the north pasture. I want to know if anyone else is coming." Luke glanced toward Rebecca and Emma, then toward the distant ridge. "How much trouble?" "Enough." Luke nodded and walked away at once. Rebecca caught Noah's sleeve before he could leave the porch. Her torn glove scraped against the rough wool of his coat. "Do not face them without knowing who they are." Noah looked down at her hand. Once, that hand had rested in his beneath the cottonwoods while she promised to marry him. Now it trembled against his sleeve like something that had forgotten how to trust its own strength. "Then tell me." Rebecca looked at Emma. The girl stood near the open doorway, holding the leather satchel against her chest. She was trying not to appear afraid, but her lower lip had gone pale where she pressed it between her teeth. "Emma," Rebecca said softly, "go inside and stand near the front window. Do not open the door for anyone." Emma's eyes moved to Noah. "Will you come inside too?" The simple question struck him harder than Rebecca's confession had. He had known the girl for less than an hour, yet she was already asking whether he would return. "Yes," he said, "I will." Emma studied his face as if deciding whether his word could be trusted. Then she stepped inside. Rebecca waited until the door closed. "The man on the black horse is Amos Creed," she said. "He owns half the freight contracts between Ash Creek and the Nebraska line. He also owns the house where Emma and I lived." Noah's jaw tightened. "You rented from him?" "At first. And later." Rebecca looked down at the mud on her skirt. "Later, he claimed I owed him more than money." Noah went still. She raised her eyes quickly. "He never touched me. I would not have stayed if he had. But he began deciding where I worked, who I spoke to, and when Emma could leave the house. Each favor became another debt in his book. Why did you let him near either of you? Because I was alone. The answer carried no excuse, only weariness. Rebecca drew a breath. When Emma was 6, she became ill. The doctor said she might not survive the winter without medicine and warm rooms. Amos paid what I could not. After that, he treated us as if he had purchased something. Noah looked through the window. Emma stood in the front room, barely visible behind the curtain. What does he mean when he says she belongs to him? 3 years ago, he asked me to marry him. I refused. He then produced papers claiming I had agreed that if I failed to repay my debts, Emma would enter his guardianship. Noah's expression darkened. You signed them. I signed a loan paper, not a guardianship agreement. He changed it later or replaced the page. I could never prove which. The two riders had started down from the ridge. Rebecca continued quickly. A judge in Millstone was prepared to review the papers. The night before the hearing, the judge's office burned. Amos told me accidents had a way of following women who forgot who kept them fed. Noah's anger settled into a dangerous calm. Why come here now? Because I found something in his office. She opened the leather satchel Emma had carried and removed a small ledger wrapped in cloth. Noah recognized the careful columns of a businessman's accounts. Names, dates, sums, and notes filled every page. This lists payments to the clerk who filed the false guardianship papers, Rebecca said. It also records money sent to someone here in Ash Creek 12 years ago. Noah turned a page. His own father's name appeared beside a payment. The amount was small, but the date was 3 days before Rebecca vanished. Noah stared at it. My father never took money from strangers. I do not believe he knew what it was, Rebecca said. There are similar payments beside my father's name. Amos used another man to deliver them, the same man who carried the false letters. Noah lifted his eyes. Who? Rebecca hesitated. Before she could answer, hoofbeats entered the yard. Amos Creed rode straight to the porch, dressed in a black coat too fine for ranch work. He was near 50, clean-shaven, with silver at his temples, and the polished manner of a man accustomed to hiding threats behind good manners. The younger rider beside him wore a deputy's badge. Amos removed his hat. Mrs. Hale, he called pleasantly, you have caused me considerable worry. Rebecca's fingers closed around the porch rail. Noah stepped in front of her. She is not leaving. Amos looked him over. You must be Noah Mercer. You know exactly who I am. The deputy unfolded a document. Amos smiled without warmth. Then you should also know that the child inside this house is under my lawful guardianship. Noah held his ground. She is my daughter. For the first time, Amos's calm expression shifted. Not surprise. Recognition. He had already known. And in that instant, Noah understood that Rebecca's return had not merely led danger to his ranch. It had brought back someone connected to the lie that had stolen 12 years from them. The deputy cleared his throat and held the paper higher, as though the weight of an official seal could settle the matter before anyone spoke. By order filed in Millstone County, he said, the child known as Emma Hale is to be returned to the custody of Amos Creed until the court can hear the matter properly. Noah did not look at the document. He looked at Amos. You rode across 2 counties at dawn to collect a frightened child, Noah said. That does not sound like concern, it sounds like fear. Amos's smile thinned. Careful, Mercer, a successful ranch does not place you above the law. No, but it gives me a porch where I decide who steps through my door. The deputy shifted in his saddle. He was young, perhaps 25, with dust on his coat and uncertainty in his eyes. Noah had seen men like him before, men who carried a badge because they wanted order, then discovered that powerful people often used order as another kind of weapon. Rebecca stepped from behind Noah. "The papers are false," she said. Amos turned his calm gaze toward her. "You have made that claim before. This time I have proof." She raised the ledger. The change in Amos was small, but Noah saw it. His fingers tightened around the brim of his hat. His eyes lowered toward the cloth-wrapped book, then returned to Rebecca's face. "That belongs to me," he said. "No," Rebecca replied. "It belongs to every person whose name you used to hide what you did." The deputy looked between them. "What is in the book?" "Private business records," Amos said quickly. "Payments," Rebecca answered. "To clerks, freight agents, and officials, including the clerk who filed the false guardianship agreement." Amos gave a quiet laugh. A bitter woman steals a book and suddenly believes she understands figures she can barely read. Rebecca's face reddened, but she did not lower her eyes. Noah remembered that look. Years earlier, Rebecca had worn it when men at livestock meetings spoke around her as though a woman raised on ranch land could not understand cattle, weather, or money. She had always waited for them to finish. Then she would ask one quiet question that exposed how little they knew. "I kept your accounts for 5 years," she said. "I know exactly what the figures mean." The deputy lowered the document slightly. Amos noticed. "Deputy Quinn," he said, "you were given a lawful order." "I was," the deputy answered. "But if there is evidence the order was obtained through fraud, I am obliged to hear that too." "You are obliged to carry out instructions." "I am obliged to the law." A cold silence passed between them. Noah glanced toward the barn. Luke stood near the open doors with 3 ranch hands spread behind him. None held a rifle, but they were close enough to act if the riders tried to force their way forward. Amos replaced his hat. "This is becoming needlessly dramatic," he said. "The child will come with me. Rebecca may remain here if that is the mistake she wishes to make." Inside the house, a floorboard creaked. Emma stood behind the window curtain. Her small hand pressed against the glass. Noah saw fear on her face, but also something else. She was looking at him, not Amos, waiting to see what he would do. A father should have years to earn that kind of trust. Noah had been given minutes. He stepped down from the porch. The deputy's horse moved nervously as Noah approached, but Noah stopped several feet away. "You said there will be a hearing," Noah said. Deputy Quinn nodded. "Then the child stays where she is until that hearing." "That is not what the order says." "The order names Amos Creed as guardian because no father is listed." The deputy glanced at the paper. Noah continued, "I am listing myself now." Amos let out a quiet breath through his nose. "You cannot simply claim a child because her eyes resemble yours." "No," Noah said. "But Rebecca's testimony, the girl's age, and 12 years of letters may give a judge reason to stop before handing her to you." Rebecca looked at him sharply. Noah had not yet read the letter she brought, but he knew one thing with certainty. Whatever anger he felt toward Rebecca could wait. Emma's safety could not. Deputy Quinn folded the order. "I can allow 1 day," he said. "Tomorrow morning, all parties will appear before Judge Pritchard in Ash Creek. The child remains here until then." Amos's face hardened. That judge has no authority over a millstone order. He has authority to decide whether the child can be removed from this county before a proper review. For the first time, the pleasant mask disappeared from Amos Creed's face. He looked directly at Rebecca. "You should have stayed where I left you." Noah stepped between them. "Do not speak to her that way on my land." Amos's gaze shifted to him. "You do not know the woman you are defending." "No," Noah said. "That is the problem. Someone made sure I never had the chance." Amos stared at him for a long moment, then pulled his horse around. "This will be finished tomorrow." He and Deputy Quinn rode from the yard, but the deputy kept several lengths between them now. Noah watched until they passed beyond the gate. Then he turned toward Rebecca. What did he mean when he said he knew me? Rebecca's face went still. Behind them, Emma opened the front door but remained in the doorway. Rebecca clutched the ledger against her chest. There is something I did not tell you, she said. Amos was not merely the man who carried the false letters. Noah waited. Rebecca's voice weakened. He was the man who wrote them. The anger Noah had carried for 12 years changed shape. Why would a freight owner from Millstone care whether we married? Rebecca looked toward the unfinished house still visible beyond the cottonwoods, its old foundation half covered by grass. Because Amos Creed was born in Ash Creek, she said, and before he changed his name, you knew him as Andrew Mercer. Noah felt the ground shift beneath him. Mercer was his own family name. Rebecca's eyes filled with sorrow. He is your father's younger brother. If this truth caught you by surprise, stay close to the story, because the lie that separated Noah and Rebecca was only one piece of what the Mercer family had buried. Noah looked toward the road where Amos had disappeared. The man trying to take his daughter was not a stranger. He was family. Noah did not speak until the riders had vanished beyond the eastern ridge. Even then, the first sound that came from him was not a question. It was a quiet, bitter laugh. My uncle is dead. Rebecca stood near the porch rail, the ledger pressed against her chest. That is what your father told everyone. No, I watched him bury a coat and a pair of boots after the river took Andrew. I stood beside the grave. You stood beside an empty grave. The words landed with terrible calm. Noah turned toward her. How long have you known? Not long enough to stop what happened to us. That is not an answer. Emma remained in the doorway, her eyes moving between them. Noah saw her confusion and forced his voice lower. Emma, he said, go into the kitchen. Mrs. Doyle left biscuits on the stove, take one for yourself. The girl did not move. Is that man really your uncle? She asked. Noah could not bring himself to lie to her. Yes. Then why does he want to take me? Noah had no answer. He was willing to give a child. Rebecca crossed the porch and knelt beside Emma. She brushed a loose strand of hair from the girl's cheek. Because some people mistake control for love, she said, but you are safe here. Emma looked at Noah again. You promise. He remembered promising Rebecca a house, a wedding, and a life beneath the cottonwoods. Promises had once seemed easy. A man spoke them because he meant them, never imagining that another person might steal the chance to keep them. Now he understood their weight. I promise, he said. Emma held his gaze a moment longer, then entered the house. When the door closed, Noah faced Rebecca. Tell me everything. They went into the kitchen, where morning light spread across the scarred wooden table. The room had always felt too large for one man. Now Rebecca sat in the chair across from him, the same place she had occupied when they were young and his mother invited her for supper. The familiarity of it hurt more than Noah expected. Rebecca placed the ledger on the table. Your uncle did not die in the river, she began. He stole money from your grandfather and left Ash Creek before anyone could confront him. Noah's hands rested flat against the wood. My father said Andrew was swept away while crossing during the spring flood. Your father created that story to protect the family name. Noah stared at her. How would you know what my father did? Because he told me. The chair scraped beneath Noah as he stood. When? The morning I left. The silence between them became sharp enough to cut. Rebecca continued before he could interrupt. I received a letter carrying your name. It said you had learned about my father's debts and wanted no part of a marriage that would tie you to them. It said you had chosen to leave Ash Creek rather than face me. I was in the south pasture that morning. I know that now. You could have written to me. I tried. Noah stopped. Rebecca's hands closed together on the table. Your father met me on the road. He said you had sent him because you did not want a scene. Then he showed me another letter. She reached into the satchel and withdrew a page yellowed with age. Noah recognized his father's handwriting immediately. Rebecca pushed it toward him. The message was short. It warned her not to seek Noah. It said the Mercer family had suffered enough shame because of Andrew and would not survive another scandal. It promised money if she left quietly and threatened her father's land claim if she refused. Noah read it twice. My father threatened you. He believed I knew where Andrew was. Did you? No, but Andrew had written to my father months earlier, asking him to invest in a freight company. Your father discovered the letter and became convinced my family had helped Andrew escape. Noah lowered himself back into the chair. He remembered his father as a tired but honorable man, strict in his judgments and sparing with praise. He remembered hands cracked from winter work, a voice that never rose unless a horse or child was in danger. He had never imagined fear could make that man cruel. Why did Andrew want us apart? Noah asked. Rebecca turned the ledger toward him and opened it near the middle. Several old payments appeared beneath the name Andrew Mercer. Beside them were notes concerning water access, freight routes, and a parcel along the river that once belonged to Rebecca's father. Our marriage would have joined the Mercer Ranch to my family's eastern grazing land, she said. That land controlled the easiest freight crossing for 20 miles. Andrew planned to return under a new name and purchase it cheaply once both families were weakened. And my father helped him. Not knowingly. Your father believed he was protecting you from a woman connected to Andrew. My father believed you had abandoned me. Andrew fed each man exactly the fear he already carried. Noah stared at the figures. The lie had not been one letter or one jealous act. It had been a fence built slowly around two families, one false post at a time. Why did my father tell everyone Andrew was dead? Because Andrew threatened to reveal the stolen money and claim your father had helped hide it. Your father chose a false grave over public disgrace. Noah pushed back from the table and crossed to the window. Outside, Emma stood near the porch steps, feeding biscuit pieces to a small brown bird. The sight tightened his chest. 12 years of her life had passed while his family buried secrets and guarded its pride. Rebecca came to stand behind him, though she left space between them. I am not asking you to forgive me today, she said. I should have found another way to reach you. I should have trusted what we had more than the papers placed in front of me. Noah looked at her reflection in the glass. I hated you. I know. I built every year after you left around that hatred, because it was easier than believing I had not been worth staying for. Rebecca's breath trembled. I spent every year believing you had looked at the life we planned and decided I was not worth the trouble. Neither turned toward the other. Their hands rested only inches apart on the windowsill. Close enough to remember, too far apart to touch. Then Emma suddenly rose from the porch step. A horse was coming hard along the north road. Luke appeared from behind the barn, waving his hat. Noah, he shouted, Ben found something near the river crossing. Noah stepped outside. Luke reached the porch, breathing heavily. The bridge rope was cut, he said, and there are fresh tracks leading toward the lower pasture. Noah looked toward the field, where nearly 200 cattle grazed beside the riverbank. Luke's face was grim. Someone opened the south fence. From beyond the cottonwoods came the growing thunder of frightened cattle. The herd was running straight toward the broken crossing. Noah was moving before Luke finished speaking. Get every rider you have, he ordered. Drive the herd east away from the crossing. Luke turned toward the barn. Ben is already down there. Then pray he stays ahead of them. Noah ran for the hitching rail and pulled the reins free from his gray gelding. Rebecca followed him into the yard. What happened? Someone opened the fence and cut the bridge rope. Her face changed. Amos. I do not know that yet. You do. Noah put one boot in the stirrup. Rebecca caught his arm. He used accidents before. He will make this look like carelessness. The sound of the herd grew louder, a deep rolling thunder beneath the morning air. Birds lifted from the cottonwoods in a sudden dark cloud. Somewhere beyond the lower field, a man shouted. Noah looked toward the house. Emma stood on the porch, frozen with fear. Stay with her, he told Rebecca. Rebecca shook her head. I know that lower pasture. I rode it every spring when we were young. There is an old cattle path behind the cottonwoods. If part of the herd can be turned there, they will miss the broken crossing. The path washed out years ago. Not all of it. You are not riding into a stampede. Noah, listen to me. He looked at her. For one breath, they were 22 again, standing beside the river while she argued that she knew ranch land as well as any man. Only now there were 12 lost years between them and a daughter watching from the porch. Rebecca lowered her voice. If those cattle reach the river, men may be hurt. Your ranch could lose half its breeding stock. Amos wants you frightened and desperate before tomorrow's hearing. Noah hated that she was right. He turned to Luke, who was leading 2 saddled horses from the barn. Give her the bay mare. Luke hesitated. You heard me. Rebecca mounted without waiting for help. The ease of it surprised Noah, though it should not have. She had grown up in a saddle. 12 years in rented rooms had not erased what the land had taught her. Noah pointed toward the porch. Emma stays inside with Mrs. Doyle. The ranch cook had already hurried from the kitchen, flour still on her apron. She wrapped an arm around Emma's shoulders. Rebecca looked at her daughter. I will come back. Emma nodded, but fear remained in her eyes. Noah rode beside Rebecca toward the lower pasture. Luke and the ranch hands spread behind them. Frost-covered grass tore beneath the horses' hooves, and cold air burned Noah's lungs. They crested the rise. The herd filled the field below like a dark, moving river. Cattle pushed shoulder against shoulder, driven forward by panic. Dust rose beneath them despite the damp ground. At the far end, the broken bridge sagged over the creek, one rope trailing in the water. Ben rode along the herd's left side, shouting and swinging his hat, trying to turn the leaders. His horse stumbled once in the churned earth but recovered. There, Rebecca called. She pointed toward a narrow opening between the cottonwoods and a rocky slope. The old cattle path was nearly hidden beneath brush, but Noah could still see its shape. If we turn the lead cows, she said, the rest may follow. Luke, take 3 men to Ben, push from the south. Luke nodded and rode away. Noah and Rebecca cut north. The noise became overwhelming. Hooves struck earth. Horns knocked together. Frightened animals bellowed as the herd pressed toward the river. Noah looked at Rebecca. Stay behind me. She gave him the same stubborn lift of her chin. Then a young steer broke from the side of the herd and charged toward them. Rebecca's mare shied sharply. Noah pulled his gelding across her path and slapped his hat against the steer's face. The animal turned at the last instant, its horn passing close enough to tear Noah's coat sleeve. Rebecca caught her reins and brought the mare under control. You could have been killed, she shouted. So could you. The words hung between them for only a moment before the herd surged again. They reached the front line. Noah rode hard toward the lead cow, forcing his gelding close enough that the 2 animals nearly touched. Rebecca came up on the other side. Together, they narrowed the space ahead. The lead cow hesitated. Noah shouted and swung his rope. Rebecca drove the mare forward, cutting off the open ground toward the broken bridge. The cow turned. One animal followed. Then 3. The change passed backward through the herd like wind bending tall grass. The first line shifted toward the cottonwoods. More cattle followed, crowding into the old path. But the opening was too narrow. Several animals pushed toward the creek. "Hold them," Noah shouted. Luke and the others reached the southern edge and drove hard against the herd. Slowly, dangerously, the dark mass turned away from the broken crossing. For several long minutes, there was nothing but dust, noise, and the violent pounding of hooves. Then the last of the cattle entered the safer field beyond the cottonwoods. The thunder began to fade. Noah slowed his horse. Rebecca sat a few yards away, breathing hard. Dust covered her dress and a loose strand of hair clung to her cheek. Her hands shook around the reins, but she was smiling. It was not the careful smile she had worn on his porch. It was the bright, breathless smile he remembered from their youth. For one dangerous second, Noah forgot the years between them. He rode closer. "You remembered the path. I remembered everything about this place." Her smile faded as she looked at him. "Even when I tried not to." Noah's gaze dropped to her trembling hand. Without thinking, he reached across the space between their horses and closed his fingers around it. Rebecca went still. The touch was small, but 12 years seemed to gather inside it. Then Luke called from near the bridge. "Noah, you need to see this." They rode toward him. Luke stood beside the cut rope, holding a strip of black fabric caught on a broken fence nail. Noah recognized the fine material. It matched Amos Creed's coat. But Luke held something else in his other hand. A silver button engraved with the Mercer family mark. Noah stared at it. "That belonged to my father," he said. Rebecca's face tightened. Luke looked toward the road. "Then either your dead father came through here last night, or someone wants you to believe he did." Noah closed his hand around the button. The sabotage was no longer only a threat against the ranch. Someone was digging into the Mercer family's buried past, and tomorrow's hearing might expose far more than a forged guardianship paper. Noah carried the silver button back to the ranch house in his closed fist. The cattle had settled in the eastern field, though several ranch hands remained nearby in case the herd frightened again. Ben had suffered a bruised shoulder when his horse stumbled, but no one had been seriously hurt. That should have felt like a victory. Instead, Noah could think only of the small piece of metal pressing into his palm. His father had worn buttons marked with the Mercer symbol on one coat only, a dark wool coat kept for church, business meetings, and trips into town. Noah remembered standing beside him as a boy while his mother sewed one of those buttons back into place. That coat had disappeared after his father died. Rebecca entered the kitchen behind him. Dust covered the lower half of her dress, and a faint red mark crossed one wrist where the reins had rubbed against her skin. Emma rushed from the front room and wrapped both arms around her mother. "You said you would come back." Rebecca held her tightly. "I meant it." Emma looked toward Noah. "Did you save the cattle?" "All of us did," he said. "My mother too. Especially your mother." A proud smile appeared on Emma's face. Rebecca lowered her eyes, but Noah saw the emotion she tried to hide. Mrs. Doyle guided Emma toward the wash basin and began asking for help with supper. The girl followed, though she kept glancing back at Noah and Rebecca. Noah placed the button on the kitchen table. Rebecca sat across from him. "You are certain it belonged to your father?" "I would know that mark anywhere." "Could Andrew have owned the same kind?" "No, my grandfather had them made when my father took over the ranch. Andrew had already left Ash Creek by then." Rebecca studied the button. "Then Amos either found your father's coat or had someone place this near the bridge." "To frighten me." "To confuse you. A frightened man watches the road. A confused man begins doubting his own house." Noah looked toward the hallway leading to his father's old room. The door had remained closed for years. After his father died, Noah had packed away most of his clothes but left the desk, bed, and bookcase untouched. He told himself there had been no reason to change anything. The truth was simpler. Some rooms carried too much memory. He stood. "Come with me." Rebecca followed him down the hall. The room smelled of old wood and dust. Faded curtains hung beside the window, and his father's heavy desk stood against the far wall. Noah opened its drawers one by one. Receipts. Cattle records. A dried ink bottle. Nothing that explained the silver button. Rebecca ran her hand along the desk's edge. "Your father used to sit here when our families settled boundary accounts. He spent more time with papers than people during his last years. Perhaps because papers could not ask him difficult questions." Noah looked at her. She immediately lowered her hand. "I did not mean to speak cruelly." "You spoke truthfully." He pulled open the bottom drawer. It stopped halfway. Noah tried again, then knelt and reached behind it. His fingers touched wood where there should have been empty space. "A false back," he said. Using his pocket knife, he worked the thin panel loose. A narrow compartment appeared. Inside lay a bundle of letters tied with leather cord and a folded piece of black wool. Noah lifted the cloth first. It came from his father's missing coat. 3 silver buttons remained attached. One was gone. Rebecca drew a quiet breath. "Someone has been in this room." Noah examined the cut edge where the missing button had been removed. The thread looked fresh, not weakened by age. He opened the bundle of letters. Most were written in Andrew Mercer's hand. The first demanded money. The second threatened to expose the stolen family funds. Another described a plan to purchase land along the river under the name Amos Creed. Then Noah found a letter dated 2 weeks before Rebecca disappeared. He read it aloud. "If the Hale girl marries Noah, the Eastern Crossing will pass beyond my reach. You will persuade the girl to leave, or I will return to Ash Creek and tell every rancher how you covered my theft. Your son will lose more than a bride. He will lose the Mercer name." Noah stopped reading. His father had known. Not every detail, perhaps, but enough. Rebecca stood quietly beside him. "He chose the ranch," Noah said. "He chose the family name over us. He may have believed he was saving you. He saved nothing." Noah threw the letter onto the desk. Anger moved through him so quickly that his hands began to shake. "My father looked me in the eye while I searched for you. He watched me ride out every morning. He knew you had not left because you stopped loving me." Rebecca's voice was gentle. Fear can make honest people protect the wrong thing. "He was not honest." "No, not then." Noah turned away. For 12 years he had blamed Rebecca. Now the blame had too many faces. Andrew, his father, her father, perhaps even himself for accepting a letter more easily than he had accepted the woman he claimed to love. Rebecca picked up another page. "This one is different." The letter had no date and no signature. It was written in hurried strokes. Rebecca read the first line silently, then handed it to Noah. "Your brother has hidden copies of the original land records in the old chapel storehouse. They prove the Eastern Crossing belonged to the Hale family before the county map was altered. If anything happens to me, give them to Rebecca." Noah stared at the page. "My mother wrote this." Rebecca looked toward him, then she knew too. "She died before you left." Which means she discovered Andrew's plan earlier than anyone believed. Noah read the lines again. The old chapel had been abandoned after a storm damaged its roof. It stood 3 miles north of town, unused except by birds and travelers seeking shelter. If the records remained there, they might prove Andrew had stolen more than 12 years from them. They might prove the land beneath the freight crossing, the source of his wealth and power, had never lawfully belonged to him. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Noah opened the door. Emma stood outside, pale and silent. Behind her, the front entrance hung open. Cold air moved through the house. On the floor lay a folded note, weighted beneath a black riding glove. Noah picked it up. Only one sentence had been written inside. "Bring the ledger to the old chapel before midnight, or the truth about the girl will die with the last person who can prove it." Rebecca looked toward the darkening windows. "He knows about the records." Noah folded the note slowly. "And he knows we found the letters." Night settled over Blackstone Ranch with a hard northern wind. By 10 o'clock, the lamps in the house had been lowered, the horses saddled, and Luke Barrett had quietly placed 2 trusted ranch hands near the eastern road. Noah had told no one in town about the note. If Amos had help inside Ash Creek, any public move might warn him. Rebecca stood at the kitchen table, with the ledger open before her. "You cannot take this to him," she said. Noah checked the cartridges in his rifle, then set the weapon back against the wall. "I do not intend to give it to him. He asked for the ledger because it can destroy him. And he threatened someone who can prove Emma is my daughter." Rebecca's face tightened. "Emma does not need another man's permission to be yours." "A judge may." She looked toward the hallway where Emma slept under Mrs. Doyle's watch. "What if the person in the chapel is already dead? Then Amos would not need us there before midnight." Rebecca closed the ledger. "He wants you angry enough to walk into a trap." Noah reached for his coat. "That is why I will not go alone." Luke entered through the back door, bringing cold air and the smell of horses with him. "The north trail is clear," he said. "Ben saw one rider pass toward town an hour ago, black horse." "Amos," Rebecca said. "Most likely," Luke replied. "I can take 3 men around the chapel ridge." "No," Noah shook his head. "Too many riders will be seen. You take Ben and circle behind the storehouse. Do not move unless someone tries to leave." Luke studied him. "And you?" "I go through the front." Rebecca picked up her cloak. "So do I." Noah stared at her. "You are staying here." "The note asks for the ledger. Amos will know if you arrive without me. He may also use you against me." "He has been using me against you for 12 years. Her voice did not rise, but the words stopped him. Rebecca wrapped the ledger in cloth and placed it inside her satchel. Her hands were steady now. "I ran once because men with power convinced me I had no choice," she said. "I will not teach Emma to do the same." Noah wanted to argue. Instead, he saw the woman who had ridden into a frightened herd that morning because she knew the land and refused to stand helplessly beside it. He took a second coat from the peg and placed it around her shoulders. "Stay close to me." Rebecca looked up at him. "I remember when you used to say that before every storm. You never listened then either." A faint smile touched her mouth. "No." For a moment, the fear between them softened. Then a horse shifted outside, and the moment passed. They left Emma asleep and rode north beneath a moon hidden by clouds. The old chapel stood beyond a low ridge, its roof bent from years of snow and wind. One window had been boarded shut. Another gaped dark and empty. No lantern showed inside. Noah dismounted first. Rebecca tied her mare beside his gelding, too quiet. He nodded. The chapel door hung partly open. Noah pushed it with one hand while keeping the other near the pistol beneath his coat. The hinges gave a low groan. Inside, broken pews leaned beneath a sagging ceiling. Dust moved through the moonlight. At the far end, near the remains of the pulpit, sat a man tied to a chair. Deputy Quinn. His badge was gone. Blood marked one side of his forehead, but his eyes were open. Rebecca hurried toward him. "Wait," Noah said. A shadow moved behind the pulpit. Amos Creed stepped into view holding a small revolver at his side. "I wondered whether love would make you foolish," he said. "It appears some things survive 12 years unchanged." Noah positioned himself between Amos and Rebecca. "You threatened the deputy." I corrected a young man who had forgotten who gave his office influence. Quinn lifted his head weakly. He forged the order. Amos's eyes hardened. The deputy continued. There was no millstone judgment. The seal was copied. Rebecca drew a slow breath. "You never had lawful guardianship." "No," Amos said. "I had something more useful. People willing to believe a respectable man over a desperate woman." Noah looked around the chapel. "Where are the land records?" Amos smiled. "You found Margaret's letter." The sound of Noah's mother's name in his mouth made Noah's anger sharpen. "What did you do to her?" "Nothing. She became ill before she could expose me. Fortune has favored me more than once." Rebecca's hand found Noah's sleeve, keeping him from stepping forward. Amos noticed. "There it is," he said softly. "The same weakness your father had: family, love, reputation. Every Mercer man thinks those things make him strong. They only make him easy to direct." Noah's voice remained calm. "My father feared you." "He should have. But I do not." Amos lifted the revolver. Rebecca slowly removed the ledger from her satchel. "You want this?" she asked. His eyes moved to it. She held it over the cracked stone basin, where rainwater had gathered through the broken roof. "One step closer," she said, "and I drop it." Amos's expression changed. "You would not." "I kept your records because I was afraid of you. I brought them here because I am not anymore." Noah glanced toward the rear wall. A faint scrape came from outside. Luke was in position. Amos heard it too. He turned toward the sound, and Noah moved. He struck Amos's wrist before the revolver could rise. The shot went into the ceiling. Rotten plaster fell in a white cloud. Rebecca pulled Quinn's chair backward. Amos drove his shoulder into Noah, sending both men against the broken pulpit. The revolver slid across the floor. Noah caught Amos by the coat and forced him down, but Amos tore free and ran toward the side door. Luke stepped through it. Ben appeared behind him. Amos stopped. For the first time, he had nowhere left to direct anyone. Deputy Quinn struggled against the rope. "Arrest him." Luke cut the deputy free. Quinn retrieved the revolver and faced Amos. "For kidnapping an officer, forging a court order, and threatening a child, I believe I have enough to begin." Amos looked at Rebecca with open hatred. "You still have no proof the girl belongs to him." A voice came from the darkness above them. "Yes, she does." Everyone looked toward the chapel loft. An old man stepped carefully down the narrow stairs, carrying a wooden document box against his chest. Rebecca covered her mouth. Noah recognized him from a faded photograph in his father's desk. Samuel Hale, Rebecca's father, the man everyone believed had died 6 years earlier, placed the box on the nearest pew. "I signed the record of Emma's birth," he said, "and I have spent 6 years hiding because Amos Creed promised to kill the child if I ever returned." Rebecca stared at him as tears filled her eyes. "Father." Samuel looked at his daughter. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I was afraid too long." Then he opened the wooden box. Inside lay the original land maps, Emma's birth record, and one final sealed letter addressed to Noah in his father's hand. For several breaths, no one moved. The old chapel creaked around them as wind pushed through the broken roof. Dust drifted slowly through the pale moonlight. Deputy Quinn stood with Amos's revolver in his hand, but even he seemed to forget the prisoner for a moment. Rebecca stared at her father as if the years between them had become a wall she did not know how to cross. Samuel Hale looked thinner than the man Noah remembered from childhood. His beard had gone almost entirely white, and one shoulder leaned lower than the other. His coat was patched at both elbows, yet his eyes were clear. Rebecca took one step toward him. "You let me believe you were dead." Samuel lowered his head. "Yes." Her voice broke. "For 6 years. I thought it was the only way to keep Amos from finding you. He found us anyway." "I know." Samuel's answer held so much shame that Rebecca stopped. Noah looked at the wooden box. Inside lay papers protected by oilcloth, a small church register, and the sealed letter bearing his name. Amos stood near the side door, with Luke blocking his escape. "This proves nothing," Amos said. "A frightened old man appears from a loft carrying papers anyone could have written." Deputy Quinn turned toward him. "You are in no position to question anyone's honesty." Amos smiled bitterly. "You think a borrowed badge makes you a judge." "No," Quinn replied, "but it gives me the duty to keep you from leaving." He nodded toward Luke. Luke took a length of rope from the wall and bound Amos's hands. Amos resisted only enough to show his anger. He knew the room had turned against him. Rebecca finally approached her father. Samuel reached for her, then stopped before touching her. "I wrote to you," he said, "dozens of times. I received nothing." Amos controlled the freight office. Every letter passed through one of his men. Rebecca looked toward Amos. He showed no regret. Samuel continued, "When your mother found the first false letter, she came to me. We began collecting proof. But by then, Amos had already changed county maps and purchased the river crossing through another name. I planned to testify." "What stopped you?" He showed me a photograph of Emma outside the schoolhouse. Rebecca's face went pale. Samuel's voice became unsteady. "He said the next time I saw her, she might be lying beneath a wagon wheel. I believed him." Noah looked at Amos. The man who had built his power through papers and threats suddenly seemed smaller. Not less dangerous, but smaller in spirit. Rebecca turned back to her father. "So you disappeared." "I arranged for word of my death to reach you. Then I hid near the northern camps and waited until I could gather enough proof to come back." 6 years is a long time to wait. Samuel closed his eyes. "Yes." Noah understood the anger in Rebecca's voice. He also understood the fear in Samuel's. The entire story had been shaped by people choosing silence because they believed silence would protect someone. Each choice had only given Amos more power. Samuel gestured toward the box. "The church register contains Emma's birth record. Rebecca gave birth near Red Willow in January of 1877. I signed as witness because the doctor was too ill to return the next morning." Rebecca looked at Noah. "I did not know he kept a copy." Samuel lifted the register and opened it to a marked page. Emma Hale. Mother Rebecca Hale. Father Noah Mercer. Noah stared at his own name. The handwriting belonged to Rebecca. She had written him into Emma's life, even when she believed he had abandoned them. His throat tightened. "You named me." Rebecca's eyes filled. "I could not tell her you were dead, and I could not bear to write that you did not want her." Noah touched the edge of the page. For years, Emma had carried his name on a hidden record while living without him. He looked at the sealed letter. "My father wrote this." Samuel nodded. "He gave it to me the winter before he died. He said if Andrew ever returned, I was to place it in your hands." Noah broke the seal. The page inside was covered in his father's firm handwriting. "Son, there is no honest way to tell you what I did. I allowed fear to speak louder than truth. Andrew threatened this family, and I believed I could protect the Mercer name by sending Rebecca away. I told myself you were young and would recover. I told myself one lost love was a smaller price than losing the ranch. I was wrong. I learned too late that Rebecca carried your child. By then, Andrew had hidden them beyond my reach and promised harm if I confessed. I searched quietly, but cowardice kept me from telling you the whole truth. Do not defend my memory. Do not excuse me. Find Rebecca if you can. Ask her forgiveness before you ask your own heart for peace. And if there is a child, give that child the name, home, and love I helped steal. Noah stopped reading. The paper trembled in his hand. Rebecca moved closer. She did not touch him, but her presence steadied him. He knew, Noah whispered. Yes. He knew I had a daughter. Near the end. Noah folded the letter slowly. For most of his life, he had measured himself against his father. He had tried to build the ranch with the same discipline, make decisions with the same firmness, and guard the Mercer name with the same pride. Now that pride looked like the weakest part of them all. Amos laughed softly. Touching, he said, but none of it changes what tomorrow will bring. Those documents will need verification. Judges can be persuaded, clerks can lose papers, witnesses can disappear. Deputy Quinn stepped closer. Is that a confession? It is an observation. Samuel looked at Noah. There is one more record. He lifted an old county map from the box and spread it over the broken pew. The Eastern Crossing, Amos's most valuable freight route, had been marked in red. This land never belonged to Andrew, Samuel said. The original claim remained under Rebecca's mother's name. He altered the county copy after she died. Rebecca stared at the map. Then the crossing belongs to me. It belongs to you and Emma. Amos's composure finally broke. You have no idea what that land is worth. Rebecca faced him. I know exactly what it cost. No one spoke after that. The words filled the chapel more completely than any shout could have. Deputy Quinn prepared to take Amos toward town. Luke and Ben would ride beside him. Samuel, weak from years of hiding and poor food, needed help mounting a horse. Before they left, Noah caught Rebecca's hand. She looked down at their joined fingers. We have the proof now, she said. We have paper, Noah replied. Tomorrow we still need people willing to speak the truth in public. Rebecca met his eyes. Then we will speak. For the first time since her return, Noah did not see the frightened young woman who had left Ash Creek. He saw someone who had crossed 12 hard years, protected their daughter, faced the man who controlled her life, and returned carrying the truth. He lifted her hand slightly, but stopped before bringing it to his lips. There were still wounds between them. Still questions. Still a hearing that could decide whether Emma remained at Blackstone Ranch. Yet Rebecca did not pull away. If you believe the truth can survive even after years of silence, stay with Noah and Rebecca, because the hardest part is not finding the proof. It is standing before an entire town and asking them to admit what they helped ignore. They returned to the ranch just before dawn. Mrs. Doyle met them at the door, her face white with worry. Emma is gone, she said. Rebecca's hand slipped from Noah's. On the kitchen table lay Emma's small leather satchel and a note written in a child's careful hand. I heard what Mr. Creed said. I am going to prove I belong here so no one has to fight over me anymore. Noah looked toward the open back door. Outside, the bay pony Rebecca had ridden was missing, and fresh hoofprints led toward Ash Creek. Rebecca reached the stable before Noah. The empty stall told them what the hoofprints already had. Emma had taken the gentle bay pony, the same mare Rebecca had ridden during the cattle run. A small saddle was missing from the tack room, along with a wool blanket and one tin cup. She planned this, Rebecca said, breathless. She must have been listening. Noah lifted a lantern near the stable door and studied the tracks. The prints were fresh, but the ground beyond the yard had hardened under the night frost. She cannot be more than an hour ahead. She has never ridden alone. She knows the road to town. Rebecca shook her head, only what she saw from the wagon yesterday. Noah was already saddling his gelding. Rebecca reached for another bridle. "You stay here." She turned on him. "Do not say that again. You have been awake all night. And my daughter is somewhere in the dark." "Our daughter." The words stopped them both. Noah had said them without thought, but once spoken, they settled between them with quiet force. Rebecca looked down. "Yes," she said, "our daughter." Noah tightened the saddle strap. "Then we find her together." They rode toward Ash Creek as the first gray light appeared in the east. The road curved through frozen grassland and low cottonwood stands. Noah watched every patch of mud, every broken weed, every mark along the shoulder. For the first mile, the pony's tracks remained clear. Then they reached the fork near Miller's Ridge. One road continued toward town. The other led south toward the eastern freight crossing. The hoofprints turned south. Rebecca's face tightened. Why would she go there? She heard Amos say the land records could be challenged. She thinks the crossing will prove she belongs to us. Noah urged his horse forward. The sky brightened slowly, revealing dark clouds gathering above the mountains. A thin snow began to fall, soft at first, then harder as the wind rose. They found the pony near the old toll house. The mare stood beneath a cottonwood with loose reins trailing in the mud. Her saddle was empty. Rebecca called Emma's name. No answer came. Noah dismounted and found small boot prints leading toward the freight office, a long wooden building beside the crossing. The front door stood open. He drew Rebecca behind him before entering. The office smelled of cold ashes and damp paper. Shelves lined the walls, but several had been pulled down. Records covered the floor. "Emma," Rebecca called. A faint sound came from the back room. They hurried through the doorway. Emma sat beside a broken desk, holding a bundle of papers against her chest. One knee of her coat was torn and dust marked her cheek, but she was unharmed. Rebecca dropped to the floor and pulled her into her arms. "What were you thinking?" Emma began crying only after she was held. "I heard Mr. Creed say the papers might disappear. I thought if I found the town copy, the judge would have to believe us. You could have been hurt. I wanted to help." Noah knelt beside them. Emma looked at him through tears. "I do not want you to lose your ranch because of me." He rested one hand on her shoulder. "Listen carefully. There is nothing on this ranch more important than you." She searched his face. "Even though you only met me yesterday. I should have known you your whole life. That is not your fault, and it does not make you less mine." Emma lowered her eyes. "What if the judge says I have to go? Then the judge will be wrong." Rebecca looked at Noah. The certainty in his voice seemed to reach her too. Emma held out the papers. "I found these under the desk." Noah opened the first sheet. It was a freight deed bearing Amos Creed's name. Beneath it lay older documents, some marked with Andrew Mercer's original signature. The dates revealed that Amos had transferred the crossing to himself before Rebecca's mother died, using a witness who had been dead for 2 years at the time. "This proves the deed was false," Rebecca said. Noah looked around the ruined office. Someone else had searched the place before Emma arrived. Drawers had been emptied. A cabinet stood open, its lock broken. "Amos sent someone ahead," he said. A floorboard creaked in the front room. Noah rose. "Stay here." He stepped through the doorway. A man stood near the entrance wearing a tan coat and a low hat. Noah recognized him as Amos's freight foreman, Wade Prout. Wade held no weapon, but his face was tight with desperation. "Give me those papers," he said. "No." You do not understand. Creed kept records on all of us, debts, mistakes, things a man would not want made public. So you helped him threaten a child. I came to burn the deeds before the hearing. Rebecca appeared behind Noah, with Emma close to her side. Wade looked at the girl, and shame crossed his face. I did not know she was here. Noah stepped closer. You cut my bridge rope. Wade's eyes lowered. Creed ordered it. And the silver button. He gave it to me, said it would make you chase ghosts instead of watching the ranch. Rebecca held Emma tighter. Wade rubbed both hands over his face. He promised to clear my debts if I destroyed the land records. But now he is under arrest, and every man he ever used will be looking for someone else to blame. Noah studied him. Then stop helping him. Wade looked toward the papers in Emma's hands. What do you want? Stand before the judge and tell the truth. Fear moved plainly across Wade's face. If I do, I lose everything. Noah glanced at Emma. She nearly lost her father because men kept choosing what they feared, losing over what was right. Wade remained silent. Outside, church bells began ringing in Ash Creek. The hearing was about to begin. Noah gathered the documents. You can come with us and speak, he said, or remain here and spend the rest of your life wondering whether Amos Creed was worth becoming like him. Wade looked toward the open road. Then he removed his hat. I will testify. By the time they reached the Ash Creek Church Hall, the entire town seemed to be waiting outside. Ranchers, shopkeepers, freight workers, and families filled the steps and road. Deputy Quinn stood near the door. His face was grim. The county judge arrived early, he said. So did a federal land inspector. Noah handed him the false deeds. Quinn looked through them quickly. This may finish Creed. Then he glanced toward the guarded wagon beside the church. Its rear door stood open. The restraints lay empty inside. Amos Creed had escaped. The empty wagon changed the sound of the morning. A moment earlier, the crowd outside the church hall had been restless with whispers. Now every voice fell away. Men looked toward the road. Women pulled children closer. Deputy Quinn stared at the broken restraint as if anger alone might tell him which direction Amos had taken. How long ago? Noah asked. Less than 20 minutes, Quinn replied. The guard claims someone struck him from behind. Wade Prout stepped forward slowly. He will not run from Ash Creek. Quinn turned on him. You seem certain. Because leaving would mean surrendering everything he built. Wade looked toward the eastern hills. He will go where he believes he still has power. Rebecca held Emma's hand. The crossing. Wade nodded. The toll house has a locked cellar. Creed kept money, deeds, and private records there. If he can destroy them before the inspector arrives, he may still argue that every paper against him was planted. Noah looked toward the church doors. The hearing could clear Rebecca's name and establish Emma's birth record. But Amos was riding toward the place where the rest of the evidence lay. Noah faced Deputy Quinn. Begin the hearing without us. You are the principal witness. Rebecca has the birth register, my father's letter, and Samuel's testimony. Wade can speak about the sabotage and false deeds. Rebecca tightened her grip on his arm. You are not riding after him alone. This ends today. That is why I am coming. Emma looked between them and me. No, Noah and Rebecca said together. For the first time that morning, Emma almost smiled. Mrs. Doyle pushed through the crowd and wrapped an arm around her. Samuel Hale stood beside them, pale but steady. I will remain with her, Samuel said. Rebecca studied her father. The hurt between them had not disappeared, but something gentler had begun beside it. Do not leave her, she said. I will not make that mistake again. Noah and Rebecca mounted and rode east with Quinn and two deputies close behind. Snow swept across the road in thin white lines. By the time the crossing appeared, smoke was rising from the toll house. Amos stood outside feeding papers into a metal barrel. Flames climbed around the edges of old deeds and account books. His black coat snapped in the wind. A horse waited near the river path, saddled for escape. Quinn drew his revolver but kept it lowered. "Amos Creed," he called, "step away from the fire." Amos turned. His face looked different without the calm smile he had worn for years. Fear had stripped away the polished manners, leaving only anger. "You think these papers matter?" he shouted. "This county exists because men like me built roads while ranchers argued over grass." "You built nothing honestly," Rebecca said. Amos looked at her. "You survived because of me. I survived despite you." He reached into his coat. Quinn raised his weapon. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Amos pulled out a folded document, not a gun. "This is the only guardianship record that matters," he said. "Signed by Rebecca Hale, witnessed and sealed." "It was altered," Rebecca replied. "Can you prove which line was added and when?" Wade rode into the yard behind them. "I can." Amos's face changed. Wade dismounted and stood beside Quinn. "I watched you replace the second page," he said. "You paid Clerk Danner to file it after Rebecca signed the loan agreement. You are a debtor and a thief." "Yes," Wade answered, "but today I am also a witness." Amos glanced toward his horse. Noah saw the decision before he moved. Amos threw the document into the flames and ran. Noah cut him off before he reached the saddle. Amos swung wildly, striking Noah across the jaw. Noah staggered but stayed upright. Years of anger rushed through him. He thought of the unfinished house near the cottonwoods, Rebecca giving birth without him, Emma learning to ride from strangers, his father dying beneath the weight of his silence. Noah caught Amos by the coat and forced him against the fence. One hard blow would have been easy. A second would have felt deserved. Then Rebecca spoke behind him. "Noah." Only his name. Nothing more. He looked at her and understood. If he let 12 years of stolen time turn him cruel, Amos would take one final thing from them. Noah released him. Quinn stepped forward and fastened iron restraints around Amos's wrists. "You should have ended me when you had the chance," Amos muttered. "No," Noah said. "You will stand in daylight and hear the truth spoken where everyone can witness it." The hearing lasted until late afternoon. Samuel testified about the false letters and the original land claim. Wade admitted cutting the bridge rope and described Amos's payments to county officials. Deputy Quinn presented the forged guardianship order. The federal inspector compared the altered deeds with the original maps from the chapel box. Finally, Rebecca placed Emma's birth record before the judge. The judge read it in silence. "The court recognizes Noah Mercer as Emma Hale's father," he declared. "Any guardianship claim held by Amos Creed is fraudulent and void." Rebecca closed her eyes. Noah felt Emma's hand slip into his. The county restored the eastern crossing to Rebecca and Emma. Amos was removed from the land office records and sent to face charges for fraud, kidnapping, bribery, and destruction of evidence. The men who had helped him were investigated, though those who testified honestly were shown mercy. Justice did not return 12 years. It did something smaller and more useful. It stopped the lie from taking another day. Spring reached Blackstone Ranch slowly that year. Snow melted from the lower pasture, and the cottonwoods put out pale green leaves. Noah repaired the old house he had begun building for Rebecca before their first wedding date. He did not decide for her what it should become. He asked. Rebecca chose wider windows, a room for Emma facing the mountains, and a blue front door. One evening, Noah took Rebecca to the riverbank where he had once promised her a life together. I cannot ask you to forget what happened, he said. I would not want to. Forgetting would mean losing the parts that made us who we are. He held out his mother's silver ring, polished after years inside the chapel box. I loved you when I was too young to understand how easily fear can speak louder than trust. I love you now knowing exactly what silence costs. Rebecca's eyes filled. Noah lowered himself onto one knee in the soft river mud. I have no way to give back the years we lost, but I have every year still ahead of me. Will you share them with me? Rebecca laughed through her tears. I came home hoping you might forgive me. She touched his face. I never imagined I would be asked to stay. They married beneath the cottonwoods in June. Emma stood between them afterward, holding both their hands while the evening sun settled across the ranch. The old fences still marked the land, but the blue door stood open behind them. And for the first time in 12 years, no one in the Mercer family was waiting for the past to return. They were already home,